Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready City Play. Today I've got a very special game. It's the new Civilization game from Fantasy Flight Games. Designed by James Niffen, it's a sort of a light 4X game for 2 to 4 players that takes roughly an hour to 2 hours to play. At least that's what it says on the box. The game is based on Sid Meier's Civilization, a video game of the same name, now on its 6th iteration, if you don't count all the sort of spin-offs. And the video game is notorious for taking a long time and being highly addictive, encouraging you to play well into the early hours of the morning, as I know I have. With that in mind, this is not as grand in scope as the video game. It's lighter. There's no AI controlled opponents or anything like that. It's just a bunch of players sitting around a map, each with a civilization, one of the 8 civilizations that the game offers, and vying for certain victory objectives in order to win the game. So what I'll do is I'll give you a quick rundown of what's in the box, and then I'll run through the rules and explain how you are going to become the most powerful civilization in the known world. So in the box we've got 8 ancient civilizations, or maybe slightly less ancient civilizations. We've got Sumeria and their leader Gilgamesh. We've got Rome with Trajan. We've got Scythia led by Thamyris. Japan with Hojo Tokimune. The Aztecs led by Montezuma. We've got France with Catherine de' Medici. Egypt with Cleopatra. And America with Teddy Roosevelt. You might have caught there a glimpse of the handy victory condition cheat sheet on the back. Because the game's for 2 to 4 players, you'll only ever be using 4 of these leaders at any given time, so there's enough for every player to also have a victory condition cheat sheet as well. And each leader has variable player powers, which will be listed here. They've also got a slightly different setup for each leader listed on the bottom of the card. You should also find 16 of these land tiles, and these will be used to make up the board in any given game. The land tiles have 6 different types of land on them. You've got mountains, plains, water and desert. You've also got hills and forest. You'll also find that you've got these city-states, which are sort of neutral cities that can be traded with or conquered over the course of the game. We've got natural resources like marble here. There are 4 natural resources, which include marble, oil, mercury, and diamond. You've also got spawn points here for barbarians who are going to wander around the land, attacking you and causing trouble. There's the diamond natural resource. We've also got here a star. This indicates the starting location of a player's capital city, and these are very important. These will be used during the advanced setup of the game and the basic setup of the game, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Now we've got another city-state, and somewhere here, hopefully, we've got a natural wonder. There are 8 of them in the game. This one here is the Grand Mesa, and there we've got the Mercury natural resource and barbarians as well. Speaking of which, you should also find in your box 4 natural wonder tokens. These are double-sided, and these are used on the natural wonders, and they're double-sided because you'll only ever have a maximum of 4 on the table at any given time. We've also got 4 city-state tokens, which are again double-sided. Because of the way the board is set up, you'll only ever have to use 1 side at any given time. You'll have a bunch of these lake tokens, which show either a landlocked lake or an ocean. As you build the board, you might find that there are gaps in the board, and these will be used to plug them. Also in the box, we've got a bunch of trade tokens. These tokens are used to represent trade goods and things like that, and just kind of bonuses that you can use during the course of the game. These are the only resource in the game that's not intended to be limited, so if you do run out of these, you can just grab some more. Tokens that could be used as substitutes. We've got 1 event dial. I've already made mine, but you'll find you get a bunch of these little sockets here in the box, as well as these little arrows, and these are designed to move around the board and track what's going on. You've got a whole bunch of natural resource tokens. Don't worry, because these are based on the map, you will find that you have exactly the correct number. And you've got your oil, your marble, your mercury, and your diamonds there as well. 2 dice. These are used for resolving combat. You should also find 24 of these wonder tokens, and you should have 6 in each color. There's red military tokens, there are purple culture tokens, there are blue science tokens, and there are yellow economy tokens. And these all match up to wonder cards, which are in the game, which we'll get out in a minute when we look at the cards. But each one has a picture of the wonder it's representing, as well as the symbol of the sort of aspect it represents. Like, for example, culture, or Petra is a military one. And here we've got the Oracle at Delphi, which is a science one. We've also got here a token that tracks barbarian movement. This will be placed next to the board when we're setting up, and its facing is not important. We've got a whole bunch of barbarian tokens. These are all lettered, and again these match up to the spaces on the board, and these are going to wander around the board causing trouble for your civilizations. You should find 5 victory condition cards, 16 of these city-state diplomacy cards. These match up with our city-states that we looked at earlier, and there should be 2 per city-state, although they will say the same thing on them. It's your diplomacy back of the card there. And then we've got our 24 World Wonder cards, and these will match up to those tokens we looked at previously. You should find 6 in each color, and within those 6 you should find 2 ancient wonders, 2 medieval wonders, 2 modern wonders. Grand. There we go. And you've got, again, your different aspects here matching up to the tokens we looked at previously. Economy is here. And then we've got science, culture, and military as well. There are, of course, 4 player colors: orange, green, blue, and red. I've also organized player packs. I've got player packs here. Into the player bag I've put everything the player will need to play, and then you also need a focus stick. So let's have a look at what I've put in the player bag. Each player is going to need 1 technological dial. Again, you'll have to make this. You get the arrow and the dial and the little hinge in the center in the box. 4 of these, you'll make 1 for each color. Each player should have 4 diplomacy cards. These are very similar to the city-state diplomacy cards, but obviously they're given out to other players when they come and make friends with you. And if you engage in conflict, they lose them. Now, you should have 20 of these technological cards, and they'll be divided into sets of 4 for each type. So, for example, here we've got 4 economy cards. We've got 4 science cards, etc., for military, culture, and industry as well. And these are all different technologies that you can advance through as you play the game, and they will sort of become stronger, although not necessarily better, as you move up the technologies. And these will be used for carrying out your actions during the course of the game. Each player will need 1 of these focus bars. You should also have 31 control tokens like this, and the control tokens are double-sided with a reinforced side and a plain side. You should also have 8 cities that look like this, except 1 of them which looks like this. This is your capital city. There should be 8 cities in total for each color. Finally, you should have 3 of these caravans, which are used for trading and moving around the board during the course of the game. So that's everything you get in the box. And that's an introduction to what all the components are. I'll now go through how you set up the game and play the game. You'll also get a rulebook in the box, but hopefully after watching this video you won't need it. So in the Civilization rulebook you will find a suggested board layout for your first game. This involves sort of a balanced board layout and tells you how to set it up. You can grab a quick look at that. So that's on page 3 of the rulebook here, and it tells you just how to set up your first game of civilization. However, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the advanced setup for the map for 2 players. So the first thing you're going to do when you set up the game is assign every player a color. And once every player's got a color, you can randomly determine who's going to go first by giving the first player the event dial and the barbarian movement thing. Now, over the course of the game, the barbarians are going to move around, and you're also going to get trade goods, and this dial will tell you when that happens and keep track of that. And this little token here will be used to determine the direction in which the barbarians move every time the barbarians move. And the first player will be in charge of this. Then everyone is, it says in the rules, everyone will be randomly assigned to civilization. I think you can sort of decide how you want to do that. Maybe players have a preference and you'd be willing to acquiesce, or maybe you want to do it completely randomly. The way Michael and I do it when we play the game is by dealing 2 to each player and then allowing us to choose the one we want to keep. And once everybody's got their player stuff, their starting stuff, that's their tech dial, all their player cards, all the stuff I showed you in my player pack, they've got their civilization, you've determined the starting player. The next thing to do is to put out the victory conditions. You deal 3 victory condition cards. Each card has 2 victory conditions on it, a top one and a bottom one, and at the end of the game you have to complete 1 victory condition on each card in order to win. But more on that a bit later. So once we've done that, that's when we start into these land tiles. And the land tiles come in 3 different types. As I looked at earlier, you've got the types with the star on for the capital city. You've got the types that feature a city-state or natural wonder. Those are the same type. And then you've got the type that feature neither of those things and are just plain. So make sure you put them into 3 different piles. So you should have 4 capital city tiles, 4 plain tiles, and the remaining 8 tiles will have natural wonders or city-states on them. And then you're going to set up the core of the map, which is 4 of these tiles. So randomly deal out 4 of the tiles with city-states or natural wonders on them. Each tile has a number and a letter on it. Here we've got tile 13A, but on the flip side it's 13B. And it doesn't really matter which setup you set it for the advanced game. Just make sure that all of the tiles that go out at the start of the advanced game are on the same side. So I'm going to set all of mine onto their A side, and when you're putting them out, you put them out like this. So I'm setting up my core tiles here, and I just make sure that they're sort of in parallel. I've got 1 and 2, 3 and 4 here, and then I take my remaining tiles, which are the blank ones, and the other remaining natural wonder and city-state tiles. I'm going to shuffle all of these together. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal each player in the game 1 of these capital city tiles. So they've got somewhere to put their capital city. I'll put the rest back in the box. Then I'll take the tiles I've just shuffled together and deal each player another 2 of those. And put the rest back in the box. So you can see that with more players this process will scale to a much larger map. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to take turns alternating the placement of these tiles, attaching them to the board. And it's important to note that you can place your capital city tile in at any point that you want. And these tiles can be placed on their A side or their B side. That doesn't matter, but there are a few stipulations. The first is that you must try and put it as close to the core tiles as possible within sort of reason. Obviously you might want to think about it. There's quite a tactical decision to be made here. Unlike the video game, which is either seeded or entirely random, this has sort of got tactical decisions as the players jostle for position. Of course you want to try and make sure that you get your sort of position set up but that someone doesn't then place their capital city tile and steal that position. So you've got to place it touching the core, as close to the core as possible, and actually you've got to try and place it so that 4 tiles are touching as well when you do place it. So that's a nice legal placement there. But if I were to put it like this, that would be illegal because there's only 2 tiles touching. Now if you find that you've set it up in such a way that 4 tiles are touching, but that there are gaps in it, you can resort to our lake tokens that we saw earlier, and you can put down some lakes to fill in the gaps in the board. There we go. When you put down your city tile, you will take your player color, and you'll find your capital city, the one we looked at earlier, which is the one with the dome on it. And you'll place your capital city on the star of the tile you just placed. So now that you've done that, you can populate the board, and when you're populating the board, you'll find your matching natural wonder tokens and assign them to the different sections of the board. So I've got Mount Everest here. I'll just put Mount Everest down there. I've got Mount Kilimanjaro, which is here. I've also got all the mountains. I've got the Torres del Paine here, and then I've also got 2 city-states. I've got a red one. Now there's actually 2 red city-state tokens. So here we've got Carthage and Kabul. I'll put one of these down on the red city-state space, but it doesn't actually matter which one I use. I can randomize this. The city-state space doesn't actually indicate which one to use, but it is important to note that there is a distinction which is here on these cards. So as you can see, the diplomacy bonus for each one is different. Up to you to decide which city you want to play with or to randomize it. So I'm going to put down Carthage here. So then I've got a further choice, which is Buenos Aires and Brussels. But remember, these are double-sided, and in fact, Kabul is on the other side. So if I had put down Kabul, I would not have the choice of Buenos Aires for the industry city-state location. Put these at the side of the board there for our city-state Buenos Aires, and also Carthage for our city-state of Carthage. The rest of these can go back into the box. Now I'm going to put out my natural resources. I'm going to put natural resource tokens on all of the spaces with symbols that match those natural resources. And it's worth noting here that these are finite, and once they're gone, they're gone. So, you know, if you need to grab some for whatever reason, make sure that you do that promptly. So there we have it, the natural resources laid out. And finally, the barbarians. I'll be looking for the letters that match the letters on the board. So on tile 1A here, I'm going to put down the A barbarian token onto space A. And then I've also got B, F, and C. Good. And there I've actually got my board set up for 2 players and ready to begin. There's one other thing to go over when we're setting up the game, and that's these wonder decks. So here I've got the wonder deck for economy, which is 6 cards. And there's 2 ancient wonders, 2 medieval wonders, and 2 modern wonders. And in a 4-player game, I will use all of these cards. But in a 3-player game, I'll take out 1 ancient wonder. And in a 2-player game, I'll also take out 1 random medieval wonder, leaving just both modern wonders plus 1 ancient and 1 medieval wonder as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the modern wonders on the bottom, the medieval wonder in the middle, and the ancient wonder on top. And then I'll flip over the top card of the deck, and I can see that at the start of the game we'll be able to make the Colossus. And I do this for all 4 decks, so that all 4 decks are set up with the correct number of cards in, and the ancient wonders on the top ready to be flipped. Then I'll find the matching wonder tokens here and put those out. In this case, I'll just remove the basic wonders that were removed from the game and put the remaining ones next to their respective decks. This barbarian token should be set up next to the board. This can be done by the first player who possesses it. It doesn't matter the orientation at all because it's totally random anyway. Trade tokens should be in easy reach of all players. These additional resource tokens might have to go out depending on which civilizations you're playing with. Some people can pick those up, and also depending on which technologies the players build, because some technologies allow you to pick them up as well. So you might need those. Don't put them away. But your barbarian tokens, your unused natural wonder tokens, your unused city-states, and your unused filler lands here, these can all go back to the box. We should have our 3 victory conditions that we've put out. I'll talk about what those mean in a minute. Now, our players will, of course, need to have their civilizations in order to get set up. In this case, we'll play with the red Egyptians and the blue French. But the rulebook does state deal these out randomly, but how you choose to determine that your play group is really up to you. So each player should put their diplomacy cards somewhere to hand, because the other players might come and take those. You want to get your tokens and stuff handy as well, somewhere close by. And then now you've got your technology deck here. And what you should do is, you can see on the back here, it's got all of the different ages of the technologies. And then here you can see we've got economy 1, 2, 3, 4. So what you need is the number 1s for each type. So that's your starting technologies there. Once you've got all your 1s out, you will arrange them under your focus bar. Remember this thing? This is our focus bar. It shows you the order of the focus cards assigned to it. It also conveniently shows you all 5 terrain types, excluding water, which is sort of separate, and their respective difficulties. So we know that plains or meadows is 1, hills is 2, forest is difficulty 3, desert is difficulty 4, and mountains are difficulty 5. This will come into play later on and will be very important, so make sure you keep a mental note of that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to assign all of our level 1 techs to the slots on this focus bar, and we'll know what those are from the bottom of our race card here. So we can see that the Egyptians start with astrology in slot 1, foreign trade in slot 2, pottery in slot 3, masonry in 4, and early empires in 5. So it's up to me now to set those up. Just below the slots on the player bar. When you put out your economy card, you can put down one of your caravans on it. As you upgrade your economy cards, you can have more caravans. Make sure that when you're setting up your technology dial, all players start on 0. Alright, so with that, I've got my board set up, I've got my wonders, my wonder decks set up, I've got my players all set up, they've got their heroes, we've got our 3 victory conditions set up. Now, the number of victory conditions doesn't change unless you want to play the epic game variant, which has 4 of them. So Civilization is basically sort of an action order game, in which on our turn we'll be playing one action based on a card here in our tableau that we choose to activate. When that card activates, we'll have a couple of options that we can choose from, and those options will change subtly, but not fundamentally, over the course of the game as we upgrade our technologies. So what I'll do is I'll talk about the 5 action cards and the way in which they interact with the board and the different things that they do. So to give you an introduction, the industrial card allows you to build wonders and cities. The science action allows you to upgrade your other action cards, and it will give you additional bonuses depending on what technological age you're in. The economy card will allow you to send caravans to city-states and other players' cities, regardless of whether or not they are your allies, and these will gain you typically trade tokens that you can put on your action cards to make your actions more potent. However, it will also allow you to gain diplomatic cards. However, you must return these cards to the players or the city-state whenever you attack. And that brings us on to Masonry, which is the starting military technology, and the military technologies allow you to attack. You can attack other players, you can attack their cities and their territories. You cannot attack their caravans. Caravans are trade units and are considered peaceful, I suppose. You can also attack barbarians and city-states as well, and you can conquer or liberate city-states. Finally, you've got your culture card, which allows you to put down control tokens on the board. And these allow you to capture parts of the board, which allow you to collect resources and natural wonders. And they also allow you to complete the victory objectives. Probably the best card to look at first is the culture card, so let's start with that. The culture card allows you to place control tokens on the board. The starting one, Early Empire, says place 2 control tokens on spaces matching the slot's terrain or lower that are adjacent to friendly cities. So there are 2 concepts in this game about the state of terrain tiles. Typically they don't have a state, but they might be friendly or rival. And this pretty much determines whether or not they belong to you or another player. They're friendly if they contain your city or your control tokens, not your caravans. The caravan can be in a friendly space, but it does not make a space friendly. They are rivals if they contain your opponent's cities or your opponent's control tokens, but again, the caravan does not create a rival terrain space. City-states are not technically rival terrain spaces, although they do block passage for certain things, like if you're calculating distance for attacks. More on that later. So let's have a look at what happens if the Egyptian player were to play their Early Empire card. Now we take note here that the card is in the number 5 slot, and it says place 2 control tokens on spaces matching this slot's terrain or lower. And what that means is that when you put down control tokens, you're going to be putting them on these tiles, and they'll have terrain difficulty associated with them. Because this is in the 5th slot, which is the most powerful, potent slot, it means you can put them anywhere. You can put them on any terrain type. If we have a look at the red player's capital city here, we see that it's surrounded by 4 spaces of hills and 2 spaces of desert. Taking the control tokens, remembering that they're placed on their unreinforced side, we can place them either on the hills or the desert, because the mountains are class 5. This is in a class 5 slot, or a difficulty 5 slot, and these are difficulty 1 and 4, which means we can use them. Additionally, if we put it down, the control token down here, we can take this resource, and that's now ours. These are sort of one use only, and once they're spent, they're gone forever. So worth collecting, especially before your opponent gets their hands on them. While I'm here talking about control tokens, let's also talk about mature cities. When a city becomes mature, it has a number of sort of ramifications and effects in the game. Sometimes it allows you to attain a victory condition, and other times it will allow you to collect trade goods from the event wheel. I haven't spoken about the event wheel very much because we haven't covered barbarians yet, but we'll talk about them in a bit. Suffice to say that when this event occurs, you'll gain trade goods for all of your mature cities. What is a mature city? Well, a mature city is actually a city surrounded by control tokens. So in this case, we have one mature city here. There we go. The capital city is now mature, surrounded by control tokens. Note that this also qualifies as a mature city because it's still surrounded by control tokens, as does this. What I'm saying is that it's easier to attain a mature city if you're next to water or a board edge. Other culture cards include drama and poetry. This is the level 2 one, and in addition to the basic function that is the same as Early Empire, it also allows you to place to move one of your control tokens to an adjacent non-water space that is empty. Note that empty means it doesn't contain a token or plastic figure, which refers to caravans, it refers to resources, city-states, natural wonders, and all of those kinds of things. Up on the next level, you've got civil service, which allows you to place one on a space that's adjacent to a friendly space. So you place 2 adjacent to friendly cities. So you place 2 that are adjacent to friendly cities, just like the others, and then you place 1 that is adjacent to a friendly space. So this is powerful because it'll let you expand outwards from the cities. Drama and poetry allows the same thing, but you have to move existing ones, whereas civil service creates new ones. Finally, mass media allows you to place 3 in the same manner as the others would place 2, but then it also allows you to choose a rival control token within 2 spaces of a friendly space, and you can either unreinforce it, or if it's already unreinforced, you can replace it with one of yours, basically converting their control tokens into yours. During the course of the game, you'll be able to reinforce these focus cards with trade tokens. Now, it's worth noting that any focus card can only ever have a maximum of 3 trade tokens on it, but whenever you take that action and activate that focus card in your focus bay, you can spend a trade token to place 1 additional control token. So spending these when your focus cards are in the top slot is the best way to get the most use out of them. So next we're going to look at pottery. Pottery is the card that allows you to build wonders and also cities. When you activate it, you can do one or the other. Build one world wonder. Your production equals this slot's number. What does that mean? Well, production is what you use to make wonders. It's kind of a sort of a currency that exists only on the industry card. And when you activate this card, if you want to build a wonder, you must match the wonder's production. Or build one city on a legal space of this slot's terrain or lower within 2 spaces of a friendly space. So this is very similar to placing your control tokens, except you don't have to be adjacent to a friendly city, and instead you can be up to within 2 spaces of a friendly space. A friendly space contains either one of your cities or one of your control tokens. But more on placing a city later. First, let's look at building a wonder. In this case, the Egyptians start with pottery in the first slot. If they were to activate it, they would have 1 production to build a wonder. That's not nearly enough production to build any wonders, so they're going to have to figure out how to get more. Let's pretend it's in the 5th slot. Here it is in the 5th slot. Let's also pretend it has 2 trade tokens on it. You'll note that this pottery card has +1 production for wonders when it expends trade tokens. It's also worth noting that the trade token effect is the same for all technologies in the industry track. So even the 4th level industry card still has the same effect with trade tokens as this 1st level one. So if we activate it here, our production is now 5. And we can potentially go up to 7 with these 2 trade tokens. Furthermore, because we're the Egyptians, the cost of all of our wonders is reduced by 1, giving us an effective buying power of 8. So let's have a look and see what we can get for 8. So what we've got here are the 4 wonders available in the game. You'll note that they match all of the action card types with the exception of industry. So we've got economy, science, culture, and military. They increase in sort of complexity and value as you go through the deck. You start with ancient wonders and then progress to medieval wonders after those have been built. And then once you've built the medieval wonders, they progress on to modern wonders. They've got an effect here at the bottom. The Terracotta Army, for example, says when attacking, increase your combat value by 2. And here on the Hanging Gardens, we've got at the start of your turn, you may place 1 control token on a space of terrain that is difficulty 4 or less that is adjacent to a friendly city. Well, that's pretty cool. That basically helps extend out your control tokens without actually having to use your early empire card, or rather your culture card. So bearing in mind it still needs to be adjacent to a friendly city, but that costs 8, so why don't we build the Hanging Gardens? When we build the Hanging Gardens, we find the wonder token. Here it is. So we'll need this. And then we can flip over the next top card of the deck, which is now a medieval wonder, Chichen Itza. And this goes on top of the deck and is available for purchase by any other player. The Hanging Gardens can go here in our player tableau. And we must take the wonder token and place it in a city. If we have no cities to place it in, we cannot build a wonder. And it's worth noting that later on other players can come and conquer these cities and take these from us. Not necessarily, nobody can conquer your capital, but they can still take the wonders in your capital as well. So no wonders are completely secure, but they can be better protected. You'll notice that down here in the bottom right hand corner of these wonders, you've also got 2 symbols matching the natural resources found on the map. Now this one has marble and diamonds, but they could be any combination of the 2. When you're building these wonders and you're trying to attain the production cost, which is down here in the lower left, you can make up that production cost by spending the tokens that match these resources, which means that any diamonds you spend or any marble you spend will count for 2 production. So that's how these natural resources come into effect in the game. This is, as far as I'm aware, the only use for them in the game, but wonders are incredibly powerful, so this is a really useful thing to have. If you build on a natural wonder and claim it, and the only way to build on a natural wonder is to place a control token down on it, and then you'll collect it. This will exist now in your player tableau. You'll just have it next to your player tableau somewhere. Every time you build a wonder, you will count as having diamonds. This is like a persistent diamond effect. So you can activate it once every time you would build a wonder. Effectively, this reduced the cost of all wonders that have a diamond on the lower right by 2. And you never have to discard it. However, you can lose it if someone takes the space away from you. So now let's look at the other aspect of the pottery card, which is to build a city on a legal space of this slot's terrain or lower within 2 spaces of a friendly space. Wow, that's a lot of space. So the key word here is legal space, because it's a little more complex than just putting a city down any old place. So we've managed to play our early empires card, and we've got a couple control tokens out here. For some reason we didn't pick up the oil, but that's fine. Now we want to build a city. So there are a couple rules about legal space that are important to know. First, you can't build a city adjacent to another city. That's not allowed. It has to be at least one space away. Furthermore, when you put it down, you can't put it on a space containing a token. That's also not allowed. That includes natural resources, and that also includes, I believe, natural wonders as well. What you have to do is place a control token down first, and then that becomes a friendly token on the space on top of which you can build a city, and you would remove your control token. Of course, this still isn't legal because we're adjacent to our capital. But that's if you want to build a city on a space containing a token, like a natural wonder or just a natural resource, you will have to pick it up with a control token first. You are also not allowed to build your city adjacent to city-states. They don't like having the competition for resources, I suppose, or noisy neighbors. So it says on the card we can build up to 2 spaces away from a friendly space, but we cannot count through certain things. So for example, we can't count through this barbarian. If the barbarian was here, we could not build here, because that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, if the barbarian was here, we could not build here either, because that would be 1, 2, 3. Also, there's city-states. The city-states also block this. Finally, rival spaces also block this. So if you want to build, make sure that you've taken that into account. Finally, your terrain type that you're building on has to match the placement of the card in the row. So for example, if you want to build on a mountain, you have to have your industry card in the 5th space. The level 2 industry card is the same as the level 1 industry card, except that when you make it, you can build a city that is adjacent to a caravan, which is pretty cool. So your caravans kind of become qualifiers for building cities. With nationalism, when this card is in the 5th slot of your focus row, that's the most far right slot, your production is 7 rather than 5. So this is very useful for building wonders. You also can build a city within 4 spaces of a friendly space, and you can count through water. Water no longer blocks counting for that path, which is really cool. Finally, you've got urbanization, the 4th technology for the industry track, and this allows you to count up to 5 spaces, and you can count through water. And then after you build the city, with this card you can place up to 2 control tokens adjacent to the city, and they can be placed on slots matching the slot of this on the focus track. So that's pretty cool too. So that's the industry card, wonders and cities. Now why don't we have a look next at the foreign trade card. So the foreign trade card reads, move each of your caravans up to 3 spaces. They can move into spaces matching this slot's terrain or lower. So the space on the focus track for this card will determine what kind of terrain your caravans can move through. The number of caravan symbols on the bottom of the card determines how many caravans you will have that you can move. It also says caravans travel to cities, states, and rival cities to gain trade tokens and diplomacy cards. Trade tokens increase the focus card's effect as described on the bottom of that card. Now, also, this has a focus trade token effect on it that says +1 movement for each caravan. So you can, whenever you activate this card in the focus track, you can deploy as many caravans as there are on the card. You can also move any caravans that were present on the board that have not yet been moved. But you can't deploy any caravans that moved off the board due to this activation. In this case, we've activated the foreign trade card in the 3rd space of our focus track here, which means that our caravans can move through plains, hills, and forests, but not deserts or mountains. So here's our caravan. We're going to put him out on the board now. The important thing to note is that caravans can only be deployed from your capital city or a mature city. If you'll remember, a mature city is surrounded by control tokens or the board edge or water. Or any combination of those 3 things. So in this case, we've got our capital city here, and we've got a regular city here, but no mature cities at all. So the caravan will have to spawn in our capital and can then move 1, 2, 3 towards the city-state here. We've only crossed plains, hills, and forest, so we are okay. They can't cross water unless you upgrade the technology, and then they can. When the caravan reaches Carthage, we'll trade with Carthage. This means that if there are any of these diplomacy cards left in the pool by the side of the table, there's only 2. If there's any left, we can claim one. We can also take 2 trade tiles and put them on the military card in our focus track. And that's because this is a military-based city-state. If it was another kind of city-state, for example, this culture city-state here, Kumasi, it would go on the culture card instead. So here I am putting down 2 trade tokens onto masonry, which is the military technology in my track. If the caravan meets up with a enemy player or rival player's city, the same exact thing happens, except that you can take 2 trade tokens and put them on any 2 cards or distribute them as you wish on your focus track. So these can go on any 2 different cards, the same card, and any combination of the cards. You will also gain one of that player's diplomacy cards, which help you with different things. For example, open borders allow you to treat their control tokens as yours when it comes to calculating maturity. You've got defensive pact, which increases your combat value by 2 when you're defending, unless you're being attacked by the blue player. Then you've got joint war, where when attacking, your combat value is increased by 2 unless you're attacking the blue player. And finally, an embassy, where whenever you send a caravan to their capital city, you can give them 1 trade token from the pool, not one off your cards, but from the pool, and in exchange you can take 1 natural resource. When you upgrade to level 2 economy, you get currency, and that comes with 2 trade caravans. They can move up to 4 spaces instead of 3. And they can move into barbarian spaces, and if they do, they defeat the barbarian, although they don't get the bonuses from that. But we'll talk more about fighting barbarians when we get to the military card. But barbarians murder caravans unless you have currency. Then we've got steam power. This says that caravans can move up to 6 spaces. They can also move through water. When you activate this card, you can take one of your resource tokens and exchange it with another one from the supply. So that helps you get the stuff you need to build the wonders you want. Very cool. Then finally, capitalism. After you activate capitalism, you can move your caravans. You'll get 3 caravans. This is the only card with 3 caravans on it. And once you activate this card, you can move and activate your 3 caravans. But you can move them up to 6 spaces over water as well. And also, after you've done that, when you reset this card to the bottom of the track, you choose another card in the track that's above this one and activate that card as well. Now, you don't reset it, but you also have to pretend as though it's in the first slot, even though it won't be, because capitalism will be there. So that's very cool. The next card we'll look at is astrology. Astrology is the level 1 science card, and it says advance your tech dial a number of spaces equal to this slot's number. Advancing your tech dial allows you to replace the cards you have with better versions that have special effects. Great. So this is our tech dial. If you remember, we looked at this earlier. And whenever you activate astrology, you will gain a number of tech points equal to the number on the focus tracker above it. So in this case, I will gain 2. I'll move my dial up to 2. Now, this isn't enough to do anything. But if I were to move it up to, say, 3, I would then activate level 2. I could, in fact, also go all the way up to 6, and then I would get 2 at the same time. And if I went to 7, I would also get 2 at the same time. All of the previous ones that I passed in this movement. Once I've passed them, then I won't be able to upgrade again. Now, when you're upgrading your technology cards, you've already seen some of the advanced technologies as we've been looking at the other cards. You don't have to go numerically. So, for example, you don't have to go from 1, well, you will have to go from 1 to 2, because everything you start with is 1. But once you've got some 2s out there, you can upgrade your other 1s to 3s when you get to that point, or you can upgrade the 2s to 3s. It's up to you how you want to distribute these sort of technological upgrades. Again, once you get to 4, you could upgrade your level 2 technologies to level 4 technologies, or you can even upgrade your level 1s to level 4s or your 3s as well. So you could wind up with 2 level 4s and 3 level 1 technologies in your entire track, or you could wind up with 1 level 2, 2 level 3s, and 2 level 4s, because you've sort of tried to upgrade each separate thing as you've gone along. Then once the ticker finally reaches 24, which is the final slot on the technology dial, if you want to keep upgrading and get all of those fancy technologies, bearing in mind that some of the lower level ones are actually better than the higher level ones, or they might be better for your strategy or for you. So it's not necessarily the case, but if you want to go and get the rest of the level 4 ones, you can always do that. When you reach 24, if you play your science card, you gain more tech slots. You can actually reset this to 15. and then progress around the dial again from there. And when you hit the 4s, you can upgrade to more level 4 technologies. So it is possible to get all of the level 4 technologies in the game. Science has got some very cool higher level versions. The next level up is mathematics, that's level 2, and when you activate mathematics, you can take a trade token from the supply and put it on any of your focus cards that you want. Then we've got replaceable parts, and when you use replaceable parts, you can take a resource, a natural resource from the pool, from the supply, provided the natural resource doesn't match a token that you've already got. Finally, we've got nuclear power. Now, nuclear power is pretty spectacular. When you resolve this card, if it's in the 5th slot, it has an effect. If it's in any of the lower slots, it only does the advance the tactile thing. You can choose one space on the board, and in that space and all adjacent spaces, for a grand total of 7 spaces, you destroy all unreinforced control tokens and flip all reinforced control tokens to the unreinforced side. So it's a nuclear bomb going off, basically, that wipes out control tokens. Note that this will affect your own control tokens, so use it sparingly or intelligently. You'll also note that on these science cards, that the trade tokens give you +1 dial advancement for every token that you spend. The very last card is this military card, and this says here, you've got 2 effects: reinforce a number of control tokens up to this slot's number, or perform up to 2 attacks within 2 spaces of a friendly space. Your combat value equals this slot's number. So in this case, the card is in slot number 4, and if we were to activate it, then we could take 4 of our control tokens and flip them to their reinforced side. The reinforced side is much better. It's more difficult to blow up with a nuclear explosion, for example. It also defends against barbarians and cannot be destroyed by them. Well, it can, but it's more difficult for them to do that. So let's take a look at the combat mechanics, and then we can see why these reinforced tokens are better. So here we've got 2 rival cities facing off against the world. We've got the French and the Egyptians here, and the Egyptians have taken the trouble to reinforce their control tokens, and the French have not. So when they attack each other, they'll have to count friendly spaces apart. Note that what this means is that actually, unless they can count over water, which you can't unless the military card says you can, neither city can attack the other's city. They'll have to take out these control tokens first. So on masonry, it says up to 2 attacks within 2 spaces of a friendly space. So we've got to be able to count directly there, which means we can't go through city-states, we can't go through barbarians, and we can't go through water. So we can't get to the city because we would have to go through these rival spaces. We'd have to go through water. If we tried to go around, it's too many spaces. So we'll have to take out these control tokens. Now, when we initiate the 2 attacks, we can make 2 separate attacks, even if the first one's unsuccessful, then we can make a second attack against the same target. But if the first attack was successful, we can't make a second attack, which means that if a token is reinforced and we defeat it, it flips to its unreinforced side, and we can't actually wipe that token out again this turn. We'll have to wait till next time we attack. So in addition to attacking these spaces here, the control tokens in the cities, you will also possibly be attacking barbarian tokens and possibly even city-states. In this case, our Egyptian decides to attack the French control token here. Now there is no problem getting there from this spot. And if you remember earlier, we acted masonry in the 4th slot, but let's go check on it. So masonry is here. We've actually got a couple of trade tokens in here. These can be spent to add 1 to our combat value. I'll talk about that when I get in a minute. But we've got a combat strength of 4, and that's because the card says your combat value equals the slot's number. So 4 combat strength. That's great. A control token has a combat strength of equal to the strength of the tile it's on. So this one here has a strength of 1 because it's on a strength 1 terrain type. Whereas this one here is on a mountain and has a strength of 5. So that's a significant advantage. That's something you'll want to think about as you progress through the game. But the other thing is that the token will get +1 strength if it's reinforced. So in this case, this one here on the desert would have an effective strength of 5. But then it also gets +1 strength for every reinforced token adjacent to it. So this actually has an effective strength of 7. So in order to gauge the attack, we calculate our strengths. So I'm attacking with strength 4 because masonry is in the 4th slot. The defender's defending with strength 1. And then what happens? Well, then we both roll a die. So the Aztecs here, they've rolled a 4, and the French, roll a 1. So their total is 2, and the Aztecs' total is 8. So the Aztecs win. In this case, they will just remove the control token from the board because it's not reinforced, so it's just dead. If you win the fight against control token, you simply remove it from the board and replace it with one of yours. If it's reinforced and you win the fight against it, you simply flip it to its unreinforced side. Now, we can actually draw a line through here to the city. So we could attack the city. The city's strength is equal to twice the defense of the tile it's on. So in this case, it's 2. And furthermore, it will get +1 for each adjacent reinforced control token. But because there's none, they've got an effective strength of 2 here. So we'll each roll a die just like before. And so if the red player wins this, then what they'll do is they'll be able to take focus tokens from the blue player's focus board. So if the red player wins, he can take any 2 of these that he wants. He could take 2 from the same card, and they'll just become his now, or hers, and she'll be able to put them on her focus track. Oh, look at that. Somehow the French have got Petra now. Petra gives +2 to combat strength when defending, so in this case their strength's gone from 2 to 4. But when the red player takes this, and they may well do that, then they will be able to capture this wonder. If it were a normal city that they conquered, regardless of whether there's a wonder there, they would replace it with a city of their own if they were to take it over. However, because it's a capital, instead what they get is to steal 2 trade tokens and put them on their board, and they also get to steal this wonder and put it under a city of their choice. Bearing in mind that if they don't have any eligible cities because they're already all full of wonders, then they cannot steal it. So it's strength 4 versus strength 2, so let's roll the dice and see what happens. Well, it looks like the red players rolled a 2, giving him a grand total of 6. And the blue players rolled a 4, giving her a grand total of 6 as well. So now in the event of a tie, the defender wins, and when the defender wins combat, simply nothing happens. That's the end of the combat. The red player can make the rest of their combat attacks if they've got more than 1, or they can choose to move on and do something else with their lives. However, what they can do, the red player, before this is resolved, after rolling the dice, they can spend trade tokens from their military card here to add +1 combat strength. So in this case, the red player could still win because they've got 2 trade tokens on their military card. If you remember, we picked those up earlier trading with Carthage. Attacks against barbarians are resolved in much the same way as attacks against other things, except that you just use the trial strength below them. So in this case, the red city here can attack this barbarian letter A up here, or but cannot attack letter B because letter B is over 2 away, because we cannot cross this lake until we do more military research. But if we kill barbarian A, it will be our strength of the row in which the combat card was activated, the column in which the combat card was activated, against their strength, which is 2 because they're in hills. So for Egypt, well, that's a 6, and that's a 4 for the barbarians. So the barbarians are killed. And whenever you kill a barbarian, you get 1 trade token. And you can put this trade token on any card in your focus board. If there is a city-state within range, you can also attack a city-state. When you attack a city-state, it's treated as having a combat strength of 8, which is enormous and very difficult to beat. But we know you can do it. When you beat a city-state, you take the token from the board and you put it on top of your card matching the type of the city-state. In this case, Buenos Aires is an industrial city, so we put it on our industrial card. Now, whenever we activate our industrial card, we can spend a trade token as though there were a trade token on it, even if we don't have one, because Buenos Aires lets us have 1 trade token forever. We don't ever lose Buenos Aires, but we can only use it once per turn, so we couldn't just have infinite trade tokens on this card. When the city is conquered, you'll be able to put down one of your cities. Huzzah! And furthermore, everybody who's got a diplomacy card from that city-state will have to return it to the side of the board. It's gone now for good. Wait, did I say for good? What I really meant was until the city-state is liberated. You see someone come along and attack your city, and if they blow it up and it's on a city-state tile, then the city-state re-emerges. The city-state token is claimed back from the appropriate player's player board. It's put back onto the board, and that's liberated. It's now liberated. And you can reclaim those diplomacy cards if you want. Now, what the player who's destroyed the red city could do is just say, nah, I would like to keep it. They'll take one of their cities and put it down in that space. Then the city-state tile is handed over to that player where it will go to their appropriate card. So let's have a quick look at the upgraded military technology cards. So the next level up is level 2, which is ironworking, and this allows you to reinforce control tokens up to the slot's number, same as the other, or perform up to 2 attacks within 3 spaces of a friendly space. So this gives you 1 extra space of movement for your attacks, and your combat value equals the slot's number plus 1. So you get to do extra damage, or 3 if you're attacking a barbarian. So this makes you very good at killing barbarians. The next one up is mass production. This mass production gets you plus 2 to your combat, so you lose the bonus against barbarians, but you gain an overall larger bonus against rival players, and it allows you to attack through water as well, which is cool. And it also allows you to reinforce a number of your control tokens equal to the slot's number minus 1 for each attack you perform. So mass production actually lets you upgrade to perform attacks and reinforce your control tokens. Honestly, I think this one's one of the best. Unless you're planning to go all out military, this is the one you want. But if you're going all out military, flight is pretty solid. You can reinforce up to the number of control tokens. So this is back to the previous format for this. But then you can attack up to 3 attacks within 5 spaces of a friendly space. Your value is equal to the slot's number plus 3, which is a huge bonus. Plus you can count through water, rival spaces, barbarians, and city-states. That's right, it completely negates the restrictions for where you're attacking because you're just flying over everything. So that's pretty awesome. And it has the same trade token bonus at the bottom. You can add combat value if you aren't going to win the fight at the end of the fight, provided you have trade tokens for it. So now that we've talked about combat and all the cards in the focus bar, what will happen is the first player will take a turn. They'll activate one of their cards here. They'll carry out those actions as discussed. That will go down to the bottom of their focus row. It will reset to the bottom. The rest will move up. Then it'll be up to France to do one of their cards. Again, this will reset their focus bar here. And turns continue to alternate like that. But if you remember, we gave our first player this event dial. And we put this event, this barbarian movement tracker here as well. And every time it gets back to the Egyptians' turn, so after we've gone around all the players once, they will move on this event track. So the event track starts like this. We'll ignore this on the first turn, or rather, we sort of did this during setup anyway. That'll make sense when I get to explaining what it does. But on the very second on the very second round of the game, the Egyptian player, when they get back to their second turn of the game, will move this on here, which is blank, and nothing happens. On their third turn, they will move it on here, which means barbarians move. And what that means is we're going to roll a die. There we go, 5. And we're going to consult the diagram we put out earlier, and this means all barbarians move in this direction. So here we've got Bernard, and Bernard will go this way. Now, if Bernard had been commanded to move through water, he would simply move over the water and complete his move. Bernard can move as far as he wants over water. There's no limit to his water movement. If Bernard is on top of a resource token, it cannot be collected. If Bernard tries to move off the board, Bernard the Barbarian, he will actually move in the opposite direction to the one he was instructed to move. So instead of going down here, he would go up there. If he tried to move to the right, he would jump back over the water to the left. If Bernard moves onto a city-state, the city-state cannot be traded with and interacted with in any way. It can also not be attacked. If Bernard the Barbarian moves onto one of your control tokens, the control token is returned to your pool and will no longer have an effect until you rebuild it. If Bernard tries to move into a control token that's reinforced, it's flipped to its regular side and replaced. Bernard doesn't move. If Bernard moves onto one of your cities, the city is simply removed from the board. If there was a natural wonder space, the natural wonder token would be removed, would be returned to the board. And if there was a world wonder there, the world wonder would simply be left there, waiting for someone else or the original player to come along and build a city to reclaim it. After barbarian movement, we get to trade. Now, basically what happens during trade is you'll count up all of your mature cities, Remember, that's a city that's completely surrounded by board edge or control tokens. So, in fact, red player has lucked out here. They've managed to build a mature city with just 2 tokens. That's pretty good. That means that they're going to get at least 1 trade token, but they'll count up their mature cities, and if they have 2, say they have 2, pretend they have 2, they get 2 trade tokens. They can distribute these on their focus cards in any distribution that they wish. So when the event dial rolls around to the trade token, you probably want to make sure you have some mature cities on the board. Next, it'll come onto this space, which is just more barbarian movement. It's the exact same as the previous one. We'll just roll a die and move the barbarians in that direction. Finally, we've got the star barbarian, which is the space this started on, but it wasn't relevant at the time. However, what this means is that we take all the barbarians who have died and respawn them on their appropriate spots. Now, it's worth noting that if one of the appropriate spots is no longer appropriate because it's been built on, the barbarians simply cannot respawn and will not return to the game. And then we're back to the start of the event wheel, and it'll just begin rotating again, with the barbarians in an endless cycle of respawning and dying. Remember, every time you kill a barbarian, you get a trade token, so that's pretty cool. So let's have a quick look at the victory conditions, because I think we're just about nearing the end of the rules explanation here. So we'll have a look at the victory conditions and what those mean, and then I'm confident that you'll be able to set this up and play at home with your friends. So there are 5 victory cards available in the game, and you'll pick 3 at random to put out at the start, and these will determine the victory conditions for your game. You've got Civilized and Muddy Grubber. This is 1 card. If you achieve both conditions on the card, it doesn't help you, but if you achieve 1 condition on the card, that's one of your 3 required victory conditions achieved. Remember, you've got to achieve 1 condition on all 3 cards in order to win the game, and you win the game at the beginning of the first player's turn. So when the player would go to rotate the event dial, simply win the game or don't. And then the tiebreaker, the first tiebreaker is the number of world wonders you've built, and the second tiebreaker is the number of spaces you control on the board. So our card here is Civilized and Money Grubber, and Civilized means that you've got all 8 of your cities built on the board, and Money Grubber means that you've got 2 economic world wonders, and when you achieve that agenda, you just simply put down one of your control tokens to mark that you've done it. Note that if a city is later destroyed or taken from you, or perhaps you lose one of your economic world wonders in warfare, your token does not go. Once you've achieved the condition, you count as having achieved it until the end of the game. Technophile sees you getting to the 24 value onto your Techno dial. Note that just like the others, this can't be lost, so when it resets to 15, if you want to do more tech, then that doesn't matter. Also, you've got Scholarly here, which is 2 science wonders. Explorer sees you have 15 control tokens adjacent to the board edge or water. And this also has 2 culture wonders on it. Populous would see you build 5 mature cities or control 2 natural wonders. And Warmonger would see you take over 2 city-states. So if you take 2 city-states, convert them into yours, conquer them, or build 2 military wonders, then those will become yours as well. So that's my explanation of Civilization, the board game, the New Dawn, A New Dawn. And I hope that's given you the lowdown on what you need to play with your friends at home and helped you skip over the rulebook and provided a fun and enjoyable way to learn the game. I hope that I've explained everything correctly. I believe that I haven't missed anything, but if I have, please be sure to leave a note in the comments below. I do like to catch up on those and read them with chagrin. And I'll be back tomorrow with Michael to play through our game. We do play something wrong in our game tomorrow. We managed to forget that the dial is reset, so we believe that you can only get 2 level 4 attacks during the course of the game. However, that doesn't really affect our enjoyment of the game. So I really hope that you'll come back and join us for that adventure. And in the meantime, thanks very much for watching this Rules and Setup video, and thanks very much for watching the channel. And if you enjoy what you see here, please hit the subscribe and the like button, because that goes a long way to helping to produce these videos. And thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the game.